10:37 in the morning, October 14, 1943, 30,000 feet above the North Sea. The sky looks calm from a distance, pale blue, thin streaks of cloud drifting below like torn cotton. But inside the aluminum skin of a B-17 flying fortress, calm does not exist. Staff Sergeant Daniel Mercer sits in the right seat, gloved hands resting lightly on the yoke. He is 23 years old, from Ohio. His eyes are red from lack of sleep. The engines hum in steady rhythm, 4 Wright Cyclones pulling the heavy bomber toward Germany. Ahead, the formation stretches for miles. Hundreds of bombers in tight boxes. Sunlight flashes off their wings like shards of broken glass. Inside the cockpit, it smells of oil and heated metal. Target is Schweinfurt, the navigator calls from behind them. His voice is thin through the interphone. Ball-bearing factories? Mercer nods. He already knows. Everyone does. The factories feed the German war machine. Destroy them and tanks and aircraft slow down. That is the plan. Captain Robert Hale, the pilot, keeps his eyes forward. He is older than most of the crew. 28. Quiet. A former crop duster from Kansas. He flies smooth and steady, as if the bomber were made of silk instead of riveted metal. Keep it tight, Hale says calmly. Stay in formation. You can almost forget you're flying toward one of the most defended targets in Europe. Almost. At 11:21, the first black puffs appear in the distance. Flak. It blossoms in the sky like dark flowers, harmless from afar. Beautiful, even. Then the formation flies into it. The world explodes. The bomber jolts as a burst detonates off the left wing. Shrapnel rattles against the fuselage like handfuls of gravel thrown at a barn door. The aircraft shudders. Flak at 9 o'clock, shouts the top turret gunner, Private Leo Alvarez, a 19-year-old from Texas. The sky fills with black smoke. Bursts erupt at their altitude, timed perfectly by German gunners below. The fortress rocks violently. The engines scream as fragments slice through the air. Mercer feels the yoke jerk in his hands. Then it happens. A blast detonates directly beneath the cockpit. The explosion punches upward. The nose lifts hard. The entire aircraft feels as if it has been struck by a giant hammer. Warning lights flash. Captain Hale slumps forward. For a split second, Mercer thinks Hale has ducked. Then he sees the blood. "Hale is hit!" Mercer shouts. There is no time to panic. The bomber begins to roll left, dropping out of formation. Outside, other B-17s flash past, maintaining course. In this sky, staying together means survival. Falling behind means isolation. "Hold her level," yells the bombardier Lieutenant Frank Doyle, scrambling up from the nose compartment. Mercer grabs the controls fully now. The yoke feels heavier than it did seconds ago. The trim is off. The left engine is coughing. He reaches across and pulls Hale back into his seat. The pilot is conscious, but barely. Shrapnel is torn through his leg and shoulder. His face is pale under his oxygen mask. "I have her," Mercer says, more to himself than anyone else. The radio crackles with urgent voices. One engine is losing oil pressure. Hydraulic lines are ruptured. The bomb bay doors are stuck half open. They have not even reached the target yet. Outside, fighters appear. Messerschmitts streak through the smoke, their guns flashing. Tracers rip past the cockpit glass. The bomber shakes as the waist gunners fire back. Alvarez rotates in the top turret, tracking a fighter that dives from above. He fires in short bursts, trying to conserve ammunition. The enemy plane passes so close he can see the pilot through the canopy. The fortress absorbs hit after hit. A shell fragment tears through the rudder cables. The tail gunner reports limited control. The interphone fills with overlapping voices. Engine 2 is overheating. Hydraulics are gone. Bomb bay doors will not close. Mercer keeps his voice steady. "We stay in formation. We finish the run." There is silence after he says it. He is the co-pilot, not the captain, not the one meant to decide. But Hale cannot speak. Blood is soaking into his flight suit. The medic kit is open at his side, bandages pressed tight by the flight engineer, Technical Sergeant Harold Kim. The target approaches through the haze. Flak intensifies. The bombardier crawls back to the nose. The plane must fly straight and level for the bombs to release accurately, even damaged, even bleeding, even burning. Mercer holds the yoke firm. The controls feel strange, almost disconnected. He has to anticipate every movement. "Bombs away," Doyle calls at 11:39. The aircraft lurches upward as the weight drops free. Now they must turn for home. That is when the left engine erupts in flame. Fire trails behind the wing, bright orange against the cold sky. Alvarez shouts, "We are burning." Mercer does not look back. He reaches for the extinguisher switch. He prays the lines are not severed. The crew waits. The fire sputters. Then it dies. For the moment. Below them lies enemy territory stretching to the horizon. Above them, fighters circle like wolves. Captain Hale tries to speak. His voice is weak. "Get them home." Mercer nods once. The fortress is wounded. Bleeding fuel. Controls damaged. One engine barely alive, and they are hundreds of miles from England. The long journey back has just begun. The turn toward England should have been simple. Bank west, regain formation, ride the long cold air back across the North Sea. Instead, the bomber drifts alone. The tight defensive box of flying fortresses pulls ahead. One by one, silver wings disappear into the haze. No one means to abandon them, but a damaged aircraft cannot hold speed, and formation is merciless. Mercer pushes the throttles forward. Engine 2 answers with a shudder. Engine 3 runs rough. Oil streaks backward along the cowling, dark against the metal. The gauges shake. He eases back before the cylinders tear themselves apart. "We are losing altitude," the navigator says quietly. "Feather engine 2, Mercer replies. Flight engineer Harold Kim moves fast despite the cramped space. He leans into the panel, hands steady though his knuckles are white. He pulls the prop control, turning the blades to reduce drag. The engine winds down with a long mechanical sigh. The silence from that side of the aircraft feels wrong. 3 engines now carry the weight of nearly 30 tons of metal and men. Behind them, the sky clears for a moment, then the fighters return. They come from below this time. Messerschmitts, climbing in a shallow arc, using the sun for cover. Their guns flash before the crew even spots them. The bomber shudders under fresh hits. In the waist compartment, Sergeant Thomas Green braces his boots against the floor and fires through the open window. Wind tears at his heated suit. The air is so cold it burns his lungs through the oxygen mask. A German fighter streaks past, so close Green feels the concussion as it fires. The fuselage rattles violently. "Hydraulics are gone completely," Kim shouts. "Landing gear may not deploy." "Just get us to the coast," Mercer says. Another burst strikes near the cockpit. Plexiglass cracks spider across the front window. Shards scatter across the instrument panel. One fragment slices across Mercer's left cheek. Warm blood runs beneath his oxygen mask. He does not wipe it away. Captain Hale drifts in and out of consciousness. His breathing is shallow. Doyle kneels beside him, holding pressure on the wounds. There is no morphine left. Outside, the fighters press again. Alvarez rotates in the top turret, tracking one as it lines up head-on. He squeezes the triggers. The turret vibrates violently. Spent casings clatter against the metal floor below. The enemy fighter breaks away trailing smoke. Then another appears. Mercer feels the aircraft lag with every turn. The rudder responds slowly, cables partially severed. He must lead every correction, anticipate the drag of damaged control surfaces. They cannot outclimb. They cannot outrun. Their only shield is each other. The radio operator, Corporal James Whitaker, tries to raise escort fighters. Static fills his headset. They are too deep inside enemy airspace. Minutes stretch like hours. The bombers ahead are gone now, hidden beyond the horizon. The wounded fortress flies alone, scarred and vulnerable. Then something changes. The fighters pull off. No dramatic retreat, no final pass. They simply disappear. Green keeps his guns trained on empty sky. Alvarez rotates slowly, scanning. Nothing. "Where did they go?" someone whispers. Mercer knows the answer. Fuel? German fighters have limits too. They pushed hard and must return, but relief does not come. Clouds gather ahead, thick and gray. Weather reports had warned of shifting fronts over the North Sea. Now the wounded bomber must fly through it. The first turbulence hits without warning. The aircraft drops sharply. Loose equipment slams against the floor. Hale groans as the jolt shakes his injuries. "Hold her steady," Doyle says, gripping the cockpit frame. Mercer fights the controls. With hydraulics damaged, every correction requires strength. His arms ache. The yoke feels like it is connected to stone rather than cables. Inside the cloud bank, visibility vanishes. There is only gray, no horizon, no sun, no reference. The artificial horizon flickers. A wire behind the panel sparks, then steadies. They are flying blind in a crippled aircraft, hundreds of miles from base. The navigator works furiously, plotting dead reckoning from their last known position. Wind speeds at altitude are stronger than forecast. Drift could push them far off course. If they miss the English coast, there is only open water. Fuel gauges creep downward. "We are leaking from the right wing," Kim reports. Not fast, but steady. Mercer calculates quickly. 3 engines burn more fuel than 4 at cruise. Drag increases consumption. The math is cruel. The cloud turbulence grows worse. Ice begins forming along the leading edges. De-icing boots respond slowly. Green crawls forward from the waist compartment. "We have holes everywhere," he says softly. "Tail section looks like lace." Mercer does not turn around. She is still flying. Another violent downdraft slams them downward. Altitude drops 1,000 feet in seconds. Alvarez mutters a prayer under his breath. For long minutes, the crew exists in a suspended world of gray and shaking metal. Every man listens for a new sound, a change in engine pitch, the snap of structural failure. Captain Hale stirs again. "Daniel," he whispers, barely audible. Mercer leans closer. "Do not ditch," Hale says. "Not in this sea." Mercer nods once. He has seen what the North Sea does to men. The cold does not forgive. The clouds begin to thin. A pale light breaks through. Then, at last, below them, a darker line appears through the haze. The English coast. No cheers, no celebration, just a collective breath. But safety is still miles away. Fuel is low. The landing gear may not extend. The bomber is barely responding to controls, and Captain Hale is fading fast. They have crossed enemy territory. Now they must land what remains of their aircraft. The English coastline slips beneath them like a promise half kept. Cliffs, grey water, a thin strip of green fields beyond. Mercer does not allow himself relief. The bomber is still trembling in his hands. 3 engines grind unevenly. Fuel needles hover close to empty. Hydraulic pressure reads 0. Find the nearest field, he tells Whitaker. The radio operator adjusts frequency, calling into the static. His voice is steady, but his eyes flick toward Captain Hale every few seconds. This is Fortress 732, returning from Schweinfurt. Severe damage. Pilot wounded. Request immediate landing instructions. Static answers first. Then a calm British voice cuts through. 732, you're cleared to divert to RAF Framlingham. Runway is available. Wind from the southwest. RAF Framlingham. Home field. They are still nearly 40 miles out. 40 miles, Green mutters from the rear. It sounds like 400. Mercer eases the nose down to conserve fuel. The aircraft responds slowly, like an old animal refusing commands. Kim studies the landing checklist. He does not read it aloud. He already knows what it says. Landing gear, hydraulic. Flaps, hydraulic. Brakes, hydraulic. All gone. We will have to drop the gear manually, Kim says. Mercer nods. Do it. In the belly of the bomber, Kim crawls toward the hand crank assembly. It is not meant for comfort. It is meant for emergencies that planners hope never happen. He begins to turn. The crank resists at first, metal grinding against metal. He sets his jaw and keeps going. Back in the cockpit, Mercer fights to maintain altitude. The right wing dips slightly. He corrects with rudder. The damaged cables answer sluggishly. Below, patchwork farmland rolls past. Cows scatter as the shadow of the bomber crosses over them. Captain Hale drifts again. Doyle keeps pressure on the wounds, whispering steady words that no one else can hear. You are almost home, sir, Doyle says. Stay with us. The runway at Framlingham appears as a thin, dark strip in the distance. Too short, Mercer thinks immediately. Not actually short, but short for a crippled aircraft without flaps. Gear is halfway, Kim calls from below. His breathing is heavy now. Keep her steady. I am trying, Mercer replies. A crosswind pushes at the fuselage. Without hydraulic assist, trimming the aircraft feels like wrestling a stubborn machine. Alvarez leaves the turret and moves forward to help secure loose equipment. The tail section creaks ominously with every gust. Gear is down, Kim finally says. I think. Think? Green asks. No indicator lights, Kim answers. Electrical lines are damaged. Mercer has no way to confirm. He lowers the nose slightly, aligning with the runway. The airspeed is higher than he wants. Without flaps, the landing will be fast. Too slow, and they stall. Too fast, and the brakes will not hold. Fuel gauge on the right wing flickers, then drops to nearly 0. No second attempt. Everyone brace, Mercer says calmly. The runway grows larger. On the ground, mechanics and medics have already rolled out. They can see the damage from afar. Holes pepper the wings. Fabric hangs from the tail like torn cloth. At 500 feet, the aircraft shudders violently. A warning light blinks for Engine 3. Engine 3 is failing, Kim says. Hold together, Mercer whispers, not to the crew but to the machine itself. The wheels touch. For a fraction of a second, it feels smooth. Then the left gear collapses. The bomber slams sideways. Sparks explode from beneath the wing. Metal screams against concrete. The aircraft skids, spinning slightly, tearing into the runway. Inside, men are thrown against harnesses. Green hits the sidewall. Alvarez grabs a support beam to stay upright. Mercer keeps his hands on the yoke, even as the world tilts sharply left. The wing scrapes. Smoke fills the cabin. Then, finally, the aircraft grinds to a stop in a cloud of dust and steam. Silence. Not complete silence. Engines still cough. A distant shout from outside. But inside the cockpit, there is a suspended moment where no one moves. We are down, Doyle says softly. Mercer shuts off the remaining engines one by one. The vibrations fade. Evacuate, he orders. Crew members scramble through the hatch. Medics rush forward with stretchers. Fire crews spray foam along the damaged wing where sparks still glow. Mercer unbuckles and turns to Captain Hale. Easy, he says. They lift Hale carefully. His uniform is soaked, but he is alive. His eyes open briefly as they carry him out. The autumn air hits Mercer's face as he steps onto the runway. It smells of wet grass and burned oil. He turns back. The fortress rests broken on the tarmac. The left wing is shredded. The fuselage is punctured with hundreds of holes. One engine hangs crooked, barely attached. It should not have flown at all. A ground crew chief approaches slowly, shaking his head. "You flew that back from Germany?" he asks quietly. Mercer nods once. The chief walks around the aircraft, counting holes with his eyes. He stops beneath the cockpit where flak tore through. Another inch lower, and the controls would have been severed entirely. Another inch higher, and the crew would have been gone. Stretcher teams load Hale into an ambulance. The siren wails as it pulls away. The crew stands together in silence, covered in oil and blood and sweat. They are home, but none of them will ever forget the sound of flak bursting beneath their feet. The ambulance disappears beyond the hangars, carrying Captain Robert Hale toward the base hospital. The siren fades. What remains is the wind and the ticking sound of cooling metal. Mercer stands on the runway longer than the others. His hands are still trembling, though he does not notice. His flight gloves are stiff with dried blood, some of it his own, most of it not. Around them, mechanics circle the bomber slowly, as if inspecting a fallen animal. One whistles under his breath. "I have never seen one come back like this." The left wing is nearly flayed open. Shrapnel holes pepper the fuselage so densely that sunlight shines through in thin beams. The tail section is shredded fabric and bent ribs. Control cables hang like broken wires. Green walks to the rear of the aircraft and rests a hand on the torn aluminum skin. "That was our tail," he says quietly. Alvarez says nothing. He is 19 old, but today he feels older. In the top turret, he had watched shells burst close enough to rattle his teeth. He had watched enemy fighters pass so near he could see the flash in their eyes. Now he stares at the sky as if expecting it to erupt again. Whitaker removes his headset slowly. The imprint of it remains on his hair. A medical orderly approaches Mercer. "You are bleeding." Mercer reaches up and touches his cheek for the first time. His fingers come away red. "It is nothing," he says, but it is not nothing. In a quiet room at the base hospital, Captain Hale is rushed into surgery. Shrapnel has torn muscle and bone. Doctors work quickly. Blood is replaced. Metal fragments are removed one by one. Outside the operating room, Doyle sits alone. His hands are still stained. He replays the flight in his mind. If he had moved faster, if he had applied pressure sooner. He shakes the thoughts away. They are useless. Back at the airfield, a colonel from the 8th Air Force arrives to examine the aircraft. He runs a hand across the torn fuselage and studies the cockpit area. "You flew this through flak, fighters, and weather?" he asks Mercer. "Yes, sir." "Hydraulics gone?" "Yes, sir." "Left gear collapsed on landing?" "Yes, sir." The colonel nods slowly. "You brought your captain back alive." Mercer looks toward the hospital buildings. "The crew brought him back." The colonel studies him for a moment longer. Then he walks away without another word. That evening, the crew gathers in the mess hall. The room smells of coffee and boiled potatoes. Other crews glance at them with a mix of curiosity and relief. Everyone has seen aircraft fail to return. Tonight, this one did. Green finally breaks the silence. "I thought we were finished over the target." Alvarez nods. "When the engine caught fire, I said goodbye in my head." Kim sits with his hands wrapped around a tin cup. "I kept thinking about that crank. If it jammed, we were sliding on our belly." Mercer listens. He does not feel like a hero. He feels tired. Bone deep, tired. A nurse enters the hall quietly. "Captain Hale is out of surgery," she says. Every head lifts. He is stable. The doctors believe he will recover. The tension in the room shifts. It does not disappear, but it softens. Green exhales slowly. Alvarez bows his head for a brief second. Mercer stands and steps outside into the cool evening air. The sky above Framlingham is calm now. Pink light fades behind thin clouds. It looks nothing like the sky over Schweinfurt. He walks toward the edge of the field, where the damaged bomber rests, now partially covered by canvas. He climbs onto the wing carefully and sits near the cockpit. From here he can see the patched holes where flak burst through. One shell had detonated inches from where Hale had been sitting. He imagines the slight difference in trajectory that could have ended everything. You can survive 1,000 moments of chaos, and it only takes one small shift to change the outcome. Footsteps approach. It is Kim. "She saved us," Kim says, patting the metal skin gently. Mercer shakes his head. "We saved each other." They sit there for a long time. In the following days, photographs are taken. Intelligence officers count over 300 flak holes in the aircraft. One photograph shows the cockpit with shattered glass and blood on the instrument panel. It will circulate quietly through briefings as proof of what a fortress can endure, but numbers do not tell the story. They do not capture the weight of the yoke when hydraulics fail. They do not capture the sound of a wounded pilot asking to be brought home. They do not capture the silence inside a cloud bank when fuel runs low. Captain Hale wakes fully 3 days later. His leg is bandaged heavily. His shoulder is stitched. He asks one question first. "Did we lose anyone?" "No, sir," Doyle tells him. All accounted for. Hale closes his eyes, relief washing across his face. Weeks later, when he is able to stand on crutches, he is brought to the hangar where the remains of the bomber sit. Parts have been removed. The airframe will never fly again. He runs a hand along the scarred metal. "You carried me," he says quietly. The crew stands nearby, uncertain what to say. Hale turns to Mercer. "You kept her level." Mercer meets his eyes. "We all did." There is no medal ceremony in that moment, no dramatic speech, just men who understand how close they came, and how thin the line between loss and survival can be. Winter settles slowly over eastern England. Frost clings to the edges of the runway at RAF Framlingham. Breath turns white in the early mornings. Bombers continue to lift into the sky, one group after another, silver shapes fading into cold light. The war does not pause for one damaged aircraft. The wreck of Fortress 7. 3-2 is finally towed to the far end of the field. Mechanics salvage what they can, radios, guns, instruments that survived the blast. The rest is cut away piece by piece. The airframe will not fly again, but its story will. New crews arrive at the base every week. Young faces, nervous energy. They walk past the damaged sections stacked near the hangar and run their hands across the torn metal. "Is this from Schweinfurt?" one asks. A crew chief nods. "Came back with 3 engines and no hydraulics." The young airmen study the holes more carefully then, not with fear, with focus. Inside the hospital ward, Captain Robert Hale begins physical therapy. Each step with crutches is slow and painful. Shrapnel scars remain along his shoulder. His leg will never feel the same. One afternoon, Mercer visits. Hale gestures toward the chair. "Sit down." For a moment they speak about ordinary things. Weather, letters from home, the taste of English coffee. Then Hale looks at him steadily. "When that shell hit," Hale says, "I thought it was finished." Mercer does not interrupt. "I remember the aircraft rolling. I remember not being able to reach the controls." Hale pauses. "And then I remember you." Mercer shifts slightly. "Anyone in that seat would have done the same." Hale shakes his head gently. Not everyone keeps calm when the sky's on fire. Outside, engines roar as another formation departs. The sound vibrates through the hospital windows. You can imagine what it feels like to sit in that cockpit, the air thin, the metal shaking. The knowledge that every decision carries weight for 9 other lives. It is not courage in the loud sense. It is something quieter. Back at the barracks, Green writes a letter home. He does not describe the flak in detail. He does not describe the fire. He writes that they had a difficult mission, that they made it back, that their pilot is recovering. Alvarez keeps a small fragment of flak in his footlocker. It had been lodged in the fuselage near his turret. He picked it up from the runway after the crash landing. It is jagged, no larger than a coin, heavy for its size. He turns it over in his hand sometimes at night. Kim returns to maintenance duties between missions. He assists other crews with emergency drills. He shows them how to operate the manual gear crank. "Do not wait too long to start turning," he tells them. "It takes strength." The story spreads quietly across the 8th Air Force. Not exaggerated, not polished, simply told. A bomber struck hard over Schweinfurt. Pilot wounded. Co-pilot and crew flew her home. In early spring, Hale is cleared for limited duty. He cannot fly combat missions immediately, but he returns to the airfield. The first time he steps onto the runway without crutches, the crew is there. They watch another fortress lift into the sky. Hale speaks softly. "You never forget the sound." Mercer nods. "No, sir." They stand together in silence as the aircraft climbs west to east, shrinking into a silver dot. The war will continue for many more months. More missions, more losses, more returns. Some bombers will not make it back. Some will return barely held together by rivets and willpower. But on that October morning in 1943, above Germany and the North Sea, one crew proved something simple and powerful. Metal can fail, hydraulics can vanish, engines can burn, but teamwork, steady hands, and quiet resolve can carry men farther than they think possible. Years later, long after the war ends, Mercer will stand in a museum beside a restored B-17. Visitors will look at the polished aluminum and the clean glass nose. They will see strength. He will see weight in the yoke, smoke in the cockpit, a wounded pilot whispering, "Get them home." He will remember the moment the left gear collapsed and the world spun sideways. He will remember stepping onto cold English soil and realizing they were all still alive. The aircraft did not save them alone. They saved one another, through fire, through cloud, through fear. And that is why they made it home.